ground. The next election is between him and someone else who has absolutely no qualification. He's never run anything. He has not done anything that can give you the impression that he's going to be a good leader. He's you know, a guy that did not even complete a prison sentence. He tells he was to be governor, and we elect him. He comes in 3 years later, he loses Nairobi to the ground, he's impeached. Then there's another election. And in this election, we have someone who has a history that can be verified, who's educated, who has a record of accomplishment. I'm talking about Paul Kapigade. He's running against a guy who has absolutely no qualifications. I'm talking about Sakaja, has never ran anything. He's never ran a kiosk. Can't even have the discipline to get an education like you and I. And you look at these two people, and the people select someone who does not have the discipline to even earn a bachelor's degree. He goes and procures something just so he can check a box. And we put that guy into office. And right now, you look at Nairobi, they are complaining about the looting that's happening. Nothing is getting done. We also have to look at us and say, why is it that we elect thieves? Why are we selecting the wrong people all the time? So we have to look at ourselves and say, we can do better. And so I'm trying to answer the question that was asked by that lady. To me, it comes down to the people that we elect. If you elect good people, people of good character, there's always going to be a few people that are going to be thieves, but that's not going to be the majority. If you look at right now, most people that are in government right now are thieves. You look at every county, when a governor leaves, there's an investigation by the EACC. Almost every governor of Muranga, governor of Siaya, governor of Migori, governor of Kiambu, like every single governor that comes out is under investigation because we are putting the wrong people into office. And I'm just telling you, there's no resources that we can devote as a country that are going to overcome the problems that we create by electing thieves. Even the EACC, to me, is totally ineffective. But even if there was desire on the EACC to fix this problem, you just don't have enough people or enough money, right? If we elect good people, that's gonna solve 90% of the problems. And that's what happens in a place like Canada or the US, where you elect people that are people with a good character, right? They're not thieves, they're not corrupt people. And that solves 90% of the problem. So if you elect me, for example, and I understand what it means to be a public servant, I'm gonna go to Parliament, and if a government wants to do something for, wants to build, let's say, a stadium in my community, I'm gonna say, hey, I appreciate you wanting to do that, but I want to make sure that this project actually brings value to my people, right? Does it bring value? And I want to make sure that my people are involved in decision making, so that if we proceed with our project, we know how much it's gonna cost. We want to make sure that the investment is a prudent investment, and that the project is actually going to bring value to my people. But the people that we have right now, in Parliament, they just don't do that. So I think Kenya needs a total makeover. We need a culture reset. We need people that understand what does it mean to be a public servant. And we also need our own people to understand, what do you expect and what should you expect from someone in Parliament? Their job is not to distribute bursaries. They're supposed to be holding the government accountable. They're supposed to make sure that the government is not wasting our resources. They're supposed to, how can you have a country where we've accepted corruption is part of our life right now? You look at our police, for example, everybody knows the police are corrupt, and yet nothing is done about it, right? So I'm saying we need a reset. We need a total makeover. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I make a comment on Bonnie?
Sure.
Bonnie, I think for me, my thought process when it comes to that, I guess comparing America and Kenya is one thing that is evident and people need to realize is that in America, most of the systems have been set in place to promote the rich. So in as much as we may not realize, they're pretty much, if I'm to give it a good word, it can be viewed as corrupt. So you can find you have a government official who is genuine, but the policies that have been set in place are actually favoring the rich or the haves, as opposed to the lower class. So if we focus on changing the systems across the board, wherever, in every country that we are in, then that will actually take us to another level where we are trying to promote change. And we've seen that happen with the IMF, World Bank issues, and also within our internal policies. I don't know what state you are in, but I know in Delaware we are fighting about changing the entire system in America because the policy is geared towards keeping the poor and the middle class down, where you cannot lift yourself up, and the rich continue to be rich based on the policies that they've set in place. I just wanted to comment that so that we can realize that the Americans are sophisticated, where they've put their interests first. And if we try to just protect ourselves, then we'll be able to change. Or if we speak up, as the diaspora also from our different states, then we'll be able to protect the money that is also going back in Kenya to ensure people are getting that money and it's not getting stuck in between in the pipeline.
Can I just make a quick comment on that? I mean, so
yeah,
the discussion I think that we're having is not whether or not the American system is perfect. The difference between a banana republic and a country that that functions is this. You look at, so I live in Texas, right? I live in Texas. My kids go to a public school system. You know, if you follow me, you've seen where they go to school. It's always, there's always going to be, a few imperfections in the system. But what I'm talking about is 90%. If you look at the US, for example, if there's a budget for building a school, right? 95% or 98% of the what was intended is actually gonna end up happening. So they build a school, and you can see it's a good school. I don't have to take my kids to a private school because my public school works, and my kids are gonna succeed in that school, right? The difference between a place like Texas and Kenya is that in Kenya, they are taking 98% of the funds and using 2%. Do you understand the difference? Is that in a place like Kenya, 98% of the money is stolen, and the only amount that actually gets to the people is the 2%. In Texas, it's the opposite. If someone is going to steal, it's a very small fraction. So when I compare the Kenyan system and the US system, I'm not saying that the US system is perfect. I'm saying that it works. And how you know it works is I live here. Okay, I can afford to take my kids to a private school, but I don't need to do that because I know that I live in a place where the government functions, right? They have good teachers in the schools. My kids, everything that my kids want, whether it's academically, whether it's sport-wise, they get it from that school. And that's what we're trying to say. We're not shooting for a system that's perfect, right? I'm saying right now, in most places in Kenya, right, because you can't tell me that you're gonna, if your kid happens to be in a car accident tomorrow, most people are not gonna be able to take them to the local hospital because you know it's not gonna be staffed, they're not gonna have equipment. Going to a private school, many of you have their kids in a public school. You are paying money in taxes, but you don't actually get any services from it because the schools are garbage, right? So you're actually paying taxes that don't help you. I pay taxes here in Texas, and my kids go to a public school because it's a good school, right? If I send my kids to a hospital, they're gonna be taken care of. That's what we're talking about. When I'm driving on a road that's safe, right? That's so again, this is not a comparison about ideals. I'm talking about just basic things, right? You can't, I'm not saying America is perfect. I'm saying it's a good starting point. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Oh, could we please have David submit, and then we'll go to Dr. Ari, then Dr. Ajus. Thank you. David, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Judy. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you once again.
I think we lost you there. Can anybody hear him?
No, I can't hear him either.
Yeah, David, we lost you. Could you just drop and come back? In the meantime, could we go to Dr. then Dr. A?
All right. Thank you very much, Lady Justice, and all the speakers that have gone before. I think let me begin by just and I didn't introduce myself the first time. I am Dr. Duncan Onyango. I am an environmental engineer. There's some okay. There's some noise from somewhere.
Yeah, somebody mic is unmuted. Can you mute all the mics for Dr. to speak? Thank you.
Go ahead, Dr. Dr. please unmute and go ahead. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Sorry, I was not able to unmute myself previously. Okay, I was just saying I'm Dr. Duncan Onyango. I'm an environmental engineer. I teach in one of the public universities here in Kenya, the Technical University of Kenya. I'm also a consultant in environmental sustainability. Now, I want to begin by reiterating what my good friend Bonnie has just said, that the American system and all these other systems that we compare ourselves to or that we draw inspiration from may have their own weaknesses at a higher level, but at least they have built systems that work for for many of the people. Here we have a system, as Bonnie says, 98 to 2. We have gone way beyond the Pareto principle that says that 80% of our problems usually result from 20% of causes. But here we are talking about 98 to 2, or maybe even 99 to 1. So a system that works only for 1% of the elite up there and does not work for every other person is a system that we must speak up, not only speak against, but we must also take active steps towards going to rectify these problems. As Bonnie has challenged us, I'm sure he has always tasked us. We know where the solution lies. The solution lies in us stepping out, the elite of the society. Many a times we would we shy away from politics, but I think now I'm happy because most of us have realized that politics is too important and every aspect of our being and our development is intertwined with politics. And we can't leave it to these irresponsible people that we are talking about. Many people, we were trained knowing that we were trained growing up, or go to read very hard, get good grades, go to the university, you get a job. And most people for whom that principle worked, the people who got jobs after campus and they came to the middle life here in Kenya, they got comfortable and they forgot about what is happening. So for a long time, now we are waking up to realize that so many things are even happening in parliament in terms of legislations that under normal circumstances would have gone without our notice. But these are things that have very grave implications for our lives, like these agricultural laws that we are talking about here. So I want to challenge my fellow colleagues, my fellow elites. Let's not be comfortable in our professions. Let's not be comfortable in that the life is working for us. We can be able to afford the bare minimum for ourselves and the families, and we just don't seem to care about what else happens. We have seen that if we don't step out and take these and get ourselves into these into governance, then these politicians of old will run this country down in our eyes. Again, I had a lot of questions and points about the tree planting exercise. They actually call it tree growing. A good concept. They got a good concept, but as is a characteristic of this regime, they get every good concept. They get good concepts, but apply them wrongly, and they end up not working completely. The bottom-up economic transformation agenda was a good concept, looking at it from face value, but it doesn't work in actual reality. Yeah. The tree growing exercise is a good concept. In fact, they are not even calling. I heard the previous the CS when she one time on TV saying, correcting the journalist, that it's not tree planting, it is tree growing, because we need to nurture them all the way. But and as long as that exercise is not based within schools, the best place to realize that idea, as has been pointed out, would be within our schools. I was greatly disappointed when the first exercise was launched during school holidays. I asked myself, do these people really know what they're doing? We really need to rethink some of those policies so that we know, as we ask ourselves, what species of trees are being grown. That has been prosecuted very well, I think, by one of the speakers that came earlier. We must ensure they're the right species. And where do they come from? I haven't heard in my village local youth groups being constituted to form to start tree nurseries so that they can be able to sell seedlings to the government program. So where these seedlings come from in their millions, nobody knows. That must be answered. If that program is being done based in our school system and also used to empower the local communities, then it will be a good program. Otherwise, we'll end up with programs that were very good. I made reference to Galana Kulalu in my opening remarks. More than 10 years down the line, nobody knows where that project went, yet a lot of money was sunk. So the elite of our society, we must come forward. We have brilliant people in our universities, in our professions. We must be able to come out and correct the mess that is going on at Kilimo House. One of the greatest challenges, I don't know if somebody spoke to this when I stepped out, with our food security system, is this devolution of agriculture. Agriculture is supposed to be fully devolved, yet Kilimo House is filled up to capacity, so much so that they have overflown to Hill Plaza in Upper Hill. That is still Ministry of Agriculture. Kilimo House imejaa until they are the part of the Ministry of Agriculture at the national level at Hill Plaza in Upper Hill. Do we need all these people to be working on just policy? Because now at the ministry, at the national level, we were told that they're supposed to be working on national agricultural policy. Then the actual work is supposed to take place at the counties. Yet Kilimo House is full, Hill Plaza is full with the people of the Ministry of Agriculture at national level. I happen to have provided project management support to the Ministry of Agriculture on a few programs. One of them is called the Small Scale Irrigation and Value Addition Program that was funded. Actually, it happened 1 and 2, funded by the African Development Bank. Another one that is now been launched is a program for building resilience for food and nutrition security in the Horn of Africa, still financed by the World Bank. Hundreds of millions coming into agricultural programs through the national government. And what does the national government do? Like the CVAP, the Small Scale Irrigation and Value Addition Program, is meant to support small scale irrigation at grassroots level. But this program is being run by the national government. And we are sent to the counties to go and put up boreholes. We sink boreholes, then support the community to develop small scale, use the borehole water to support small scale value addition, irrigation and value addition. This program is being run directly from the national government. Sometimes you would go, you don't know what the county also has its own programs. They're building boreholes. So we have one community, like earlier this year was in Meru. The county has its own program. We're also there. So even the local communities are confused which program is which. So I feel that there's a lot of money that is going in, but it will end up that this money is not going to create the intended impact. We are talking about a program to build resilience for food and nutrition security in the Horn of Africa. What is it going to achieve? Hundreds of millions go. So if we were in a proper system, then those are monies that should be channeled through where devolution, this devolution thing. Why should there be that duplication of responsibility? Why should what role does the Ministry of Agriculture have in going to sink a borehole for a small-scale irrigation project directly in the middle of nowhere, somewhere inside the county? So those are some of the things that we have to step up and correct. Finally, there's one thing, even as we talk about food and nutrition security and all these things, we must be able to, and this will cut across all sector, we must begin to support our local enterprises to be able to do some of these things that we are doing. I want to draw an example from the fishing. I come from South Nyanza, and fishing was the traditional economic activity along the lake. Now, fishing has gone to another level. Most of the fish you eat in Nairobi here are farmed fish. Fortunately or unfortunately, maybe not farmed fish from around, but farmed fish from the lake. We know that now there are investors that have come there and they are doing fish farming, large-scale fish farming. What do they call them? Those fish caging in the lake. Those are most of our local farmers have been thrown out of business because we were not able to empower them to be able to invest in it. What is so technical about fish caging that we must get victory farms, and I don't have anything against victory farms, I'm just using it as an example, to come and invest in Lake Victoria. We couldn't put ourselves together and empower local fishermen to be able to invest in fish farming in Lake Victoria. We attended the Homa Bay International Investment Conference earlier this year, and one of the anchor investors that were given an enterprise license to operate within the new special economic zone that was launched in Homa Bay was Victory Farms. This is a foreign farm. What they simply did is to go and invest in fish cages. Now they are supplying fish all over the country. Even here in Nairobi, I buy fish from a Victory Farms outlet from Nairobi West when I want fish. So look at all that. We simply needed to support also our farmers to be able to invest in such kinds of activities. Then we are able to grow and promote our local enterprises. These people will do the business. Yes, they come to invest, they pay tax, but the profit is repatriated back into their own countries. So we really need to build a system that works for us. For us to be able to achieve food security, we need to large-scale irrigation systems that can support mechanization, mechanized agriculture. I'm yet to hear the Ministry of Agriculture talk or introduce any policy on mechanization and large-scale agriculture. So we will keep being here. We pretend that we are supporting small-scale, but that is subsistence. For us to be able to achieve national food security so that we can have even surplus to export, we must be able to move from small-scale subsistence agriculture to large-scale mechanized agriculture supported by proper irrigation schemes. And I challenge us that these things, we don't want just to end up as being advocates. We want to build a system that is going to help us achieve these things. So I want to challenge us, brothers and sisters, those of us, they are good leaders here. And Bonnie has given this challenge to us here and even to me personally. Let's not be comfortable where we are. This is the time to build and identify and nurture leadership that will take over from this current crop of octogenarian politicians that have held our systems hostage. This is the time to step out. We team together, we work, we mentor, we nurture leadership so that when we get into the next election, we want not only to be career activists where we just advocate for good things. Activism is good. In fact, we will keep advocating. But while that advocacy is going on strongly, we also need people who will step out and take over so that in 2027 or the next time we go for elections, we need to have a house We need to have Lady Justice, prosecuting these good points in Parliament. Rubicona, we need to have people now coming back home to be able to help us. We want Bonnie to come and do this economics, help us with a bit of economics from home after being away from the country for so long. So I want to challenge people. Now there's a lot of organization that is going on. There are a lot of initiatives that are going on behind the scenes, including people who are organizing themselves politically to be able to go. Because if we send one or two people into parliament, they will be corrupt. They will be overtaken by the system. So the game now is, how do we get people in mass so that we have control of parliament? Parliament is in the hands of people who can help us to be able to put these things into actual practice. So that is the challenge that I leave with us here. Let us, if you are that kind of a person, please don't keep quiet. If you have that conviction, I again realize that many of us have those convictions, but we're just quiet with them until in a forum where we challenge people to come out, and we received a lot of DMs of people of the same mind. And now when we receive them, we direct them to the right place. We team them up with people of like mind, and urge them to craft something that can help us to be able to overhaul that parliament and those county assemblies in 2027. So don't keep quiet if you feel that there's a conviction in your heart that there's something you can do, either in terms of helping us crafting a strategy or coming out to take active part in the next leadership. So don't keep quiet, reach out, let us talk, let us be able to now move this conversation from what the problem is to what we can do about the problem. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Dr. I think that was a brilliant submission. I just wanted to add to the Galana Kaludu project. It's true, is a glaring example of a missed opportunity in sustainable development. I think instead of transforming Kenya arid lands into a vibrant agricultural hub, it has turned to be a white elephant project and a waste of public resource. Another example is also the Itere Dam water supply, which was to supply water to thousands of residents, that has not even taken off. So I think there is this disconnect. There is the plan on paper, which is the bottom economic up approach, but which is very different on the reality on the ground. Thank you. That's my few additions.
Oh, thank you, Abdi, for that submission, and Dr. Ari, thank you very much as well. Dr. Jackson, please.
Thank you so much, Lady Justice, for giving me this opportunity. Mine would be robustly brief. Now, when I was just getting in, I've actually heard of people discussing our state of political leadership. And that is why I would take it before I come to the real issue in discussion. Are you able to get me?
Yes, we hear you, but you're breaking a little bit, so just go on.
Okay. Now, sorry for that. Now, let me say this, that the biggest challenges or challenge that currently we have in our country is actually the people who are leading us, and this is specifically the representative at the constituency level, members of parliament. And so we have a hashtag that is going on called Dissolve the Parliament. That is where we are facing. And then the other part that we are pushing for is also issues of ID issuance. Once we are done with that, then we can now be in a position to bring a new crop of leaders who can be able to take us forward in implementing some of the best policies that Kenya has developed that is being used outside Kenya in countries like Rwanda. That aside, let me come back to the issue of environment and food security. I happen to have a proper background on public health, nutrition, and of course, that specializations discusses a lot of areas on food and nutrition security. And part of what I wanted to contribute is currently we have got very good policies within the Ministry of Agriculture, but that ministry does not have a proper act that are embedded within the law. And that makes even implementing those policies that we have becoming extremely very difficult. The policy on food production and value chain systems that was actually launched in 2022 is one of the best policies that currently Rwanda is using even to implement agricultural production. And they are next to actually introducing one of the biggest processing, bank processing factory in Rwanda that is meant for production of drugs or manufacture of pharmaceuticals, essential pharmaceuticals. That said aside, I just wanted to let you know that our MPs have failed us because majority of the projects or projects being implemented and fail along the way are actually things that are supposed to be an act of parliament. And that then means that even if they are put in place with proper funding, they don't see the light of the day. And stealing money becomes very easy because there is no proper legislation on how those projects are undertaken and how monitoring and evaluation bit are supposed to be done. I've heard of so many mega projects that we have mentioned there before, the Galana Kulalu, Utere Dam and all that. Those projects, are having worked in those arid areas, understand that there's a breakdown in how we are actually they are actually being implemented, because they start implementing them, but along the way you realize that they flop up because there is no law. Actually, there is no proper legislation on how we are supposed to do carry out agricultural activities in our country. The other bit of it is on agricultural regulations. That is issues of farm chemicals that are supposed to be used in farm. Like right now, we have part of county, I think Meru County, I think it's a village that has so much cases of breast cancer, and that is brought by high levels of use of pesticides and and chemicals that then people are consuming, and environmentally has a very big effect to human life. I have also been in a position to implement some projects in Turkana focusing on food security. And we were doing hydroponics and permaculture food productions. That is not in the act, because majority of these things, as much as we might be discussing them now, but they actually revolves around legislations. And so it becomes very difficult to even implement some of these projects in the country, because then even the implementing partners, the international implementing partners or donors, will require you, when you are even in need of some funding, will require to state, legislations that regulate such kind of agricultural production programs. And so it becomes very difficult even for donors or development partners to be in a positions to fully implement such kind of very good initiatives or agricultural programs. And so my parting shot would be that maybe moving forward, we got to focus on, because Kenya has very good policies that currently finds their way outside, and those policies are actually being used by other countries to make their countries better, by other leaders to make their countries better beyond Kenya. And so we simply need not livestock act like the one that we saw was introduced in parliament without proper public participation, or Pang Seed Act that we saw, But rather, one of the questions that I was asking one of the guys is that why do we actually not talking about issues of regulating mechanization, as someone has said, as well as being in a position to regulate chemicals that we use, including fertilizers and spraying chemicals that we use in our farms. Those are very important because they environmentally pose a lot of, one, maybe benefits and as well as threats to human consumptions. The other thing is that if you look at Kenya Bureau of Standards and any other partner that act on agricultural productions and produce, there is no proper standard of measure when it comes to regulations of our food produce, agricultural produce, as well as supply chain and storage, mechanisms. The buck still stop with Parliament to be in a position that someone like me, if I decide to maybe propose, a bill through a member of Parliament, it can see the light of the day and for the interest of many Kenyans, both health-wise and even in terms of economically and even financially. That said, then I'm calling upon all of us that now we need to start making a very proper discussion on why we are losing our agricultural value and agricultural pride that naturally we have been having for a long time. We have been having for a long time. Today, if you move along Nyanza, where probably I happen to come from, and you crisscross our rice production zone, that is Aero, as well as even in Kisii, and even if you go to Kericho, as well as sugar industries, they are seemingly to be collapsing because now you see Finleys and Kenyans are fighting over the issue of tea productions and all that. If you go to Nyanza, for example, and Western, you will find all the sugar industries are not there. For some reasons, because there was no proper legislations put in place on how to be able to regulate or manage our food production baskets. There also is an issue of maize production. I can tell you for free, this regime might not be very, very ready to implement what we are talking about, except that if we get goodwills in the Parliament, because part of the proposals that they had initially put, even before they came into power, was the issue of banning maize production in our food baskets of Trans Nzoia and Uasin Gishu, and that is something that is in the public limelight. Remember, the gentleman on top of the leadership had already proposed that we start now to bringing on board, avocado production than maize production. And that has really affected, because then that means we have to import maize that local citizens, and recently we actually imported some maize that citizens are supposed to use, which should not be the case. So even as we are moving forward, we simply need to focus on different acts or legislations that will ensure we have got not only qualitative, but not only quantitative, but also qualitative aspect of our agricultural production. So remember, food security has got 4 pillars. Majority of almost 3 pillars are not currently actually available within the realms of our population. We have accessibility, we have availability, affordability, and acceptability. People cannot be able now, especially in those areas that we say are arid or asols, people cannot be able to actually access, the food, and because they are not available in the first place, and so not affordable. And to some extent, we also have to now start thinking which foods are acceptable within our systems, so that we don't pose a lot of medical complications that comes with consuming foods that are not of good standards to our people. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joktan, for bringing that submission. I just want to add on the part of avocado production. I read about that sometimes back happening in Kisii, and my greatest concern is avocado is known to interfere with water levels within a community. And a great example is Chile in South America. It's really messed up their water to the point now that, water is one thing that people fight over. And that comes from a result of, Chile has been a major exporter of avocado to the US, to Canada, to all these other countries. So I know that the UK brought this program in Nyanza, and personally, I don't see it as a benefit to the community. It's going to bring greater damage to the people. I see, what's his name? Is he out again? David.
Okay.
David is back.
Okay, I have, Lady Justice, I have two questions for Daktari from our audience before he drops off. And
Abdi, I can't hear you.
I can also hear him.
Go ahead, Abdi. Ask the questions, please. Ephraim, why are you disliking? Just
No, it's just a notice to tell him that we can't hear him.
Oh, I see. Thank you. So, Abdi, unfortunately, we can't hear you. Could you please go to David, then Ephraim? David Wakabi?
can you hear me now?
Yes, Abdi, I can hear you.
Okay, there were two questions coming in for Daktari before he goes off, and the one was on how can Kenya better prepare for and mitigate the impacts of climate change on agriculture and food security? That's one from our audience. And the other question was, with the heavy reliance on rain-fed agriculture, how can we diversify our agricultural practice? And the final question is that was coming was the government has made efforts to improve food security through various initiatives. Do you think there are gaps in these efforts, and how can they be addressed? How can we improve the effectiveness of irrigation schemes, infrastructure projects to reduce the dependency on rain-fed agriculture? What are the solutions you can propose on this? Thank you.
Thanks, Abdi. I'm always very poor in capturing. The first question was on climate change.
Yes.
Just come
okay.
up. So
Yeah, the first question was in regards. Okay, let me go. The first question was on climate change. Yes. How can Kenya better prepare and mitigate the impact of climate change on agriculture and food security? What role should the local community play in this? That was the question from the
just one, so that I can be able to answer.
Okay.
The first question, then you'll go to the next. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, sorry. This is one thing that actually our members of parliament do not let us know. Climate change under COP7 that was held last year, and several summits have been held on climate change, including here in Kenya. Now, I don't know if majority of us knows that we have a funding that is supposed to go to the Ministry of Forestry under climate change, and it is a very big money. It is a very big volume of money. If we had got very good governance system in our country, and where public voices are heard, I would actually see to it, and this is one thing that the CS for Treasury and Economic Planning actually proposed when he was being interviewed, that Kenya do not have to borrow to be able to mitigate climate change. Remember, climate change is a very one of the limiting factors in production of our agricultural produce, because 5.5% of our GDP actually rolls out because of or goes away or just depletes as such because of rainfall and the effect of rainfall. and almost 7.9% of our GDP, again, because of drought, because even livestock die during bad weather, during dry seasons, and even during rainy seasons. We have seen livestock actually die in most part of our country. And during rainy seasons, we have seen even plants and crops being washed away by rain. And if it was in the spirit of good governance, then as Honorable Mbadi was saying, is that we need to know proper utilization. Our countries suffer a deficient of proper utilization and accountability of public resources. The amount of money that is yet to be funded to a Ministry of Forestry, should actually be in a position to diversify production of our agricultural, enhancing, agricultural systems in our country, because you cannot talk about forestry and you cannot talk about agriculture when you don't talk about forestry. Yeah, so we need funds, and that fund is available because Kenya is just about to receive climate change fund. That's a lot of billions of money to be in a positions to regulate or regulate climate change in our country. What was the next question?
Oh, Dr. Jackson, could we let others also chime in as well? I know this is Ruby's area of expertise as well. So, Ruby, could you add on to that? And then we can go to the next question. And then Linda.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Lady Justice, for that. I'm very passionate about this because it's something that I think we have to be careful when we're talking about climate change or sustainability development. Because to me, I think climate change is a hoax. It's basically something that we cannot mitigate because of what the world is doing. So, for example, if we want to mitigate the climate change in Africa, we are being told to cut things, to do this, to do that, whereby in the Western countries, they will be able to pollute. So climate change is basically, to me, it's a wicked problem, whereby we will be able to solve the situation in one end by creating another problem. It's creating problem in one hand and solving problem in another. So it's just a swapping of problems. And Africa is being pushed into this because basically there's an interest of huge corporations. So basically the corporations, for them, they have the interest of like, for example, if you look at the GMO food and if you look at other things that are happening. And some people might not agree with me when I say the climate change. For example, look, there are people like, for example, countries like Dubai are making rain. And the chemicals they use to make this rain, the world is letting them do it, is affecting people. It's not only affecting Dubai, it's affecting people in Africa, it's affecting people in Asia, it's affecting the world. What are we going to do about that? And then another sham is here that we do carbon credits to mitigate climate change. When you do carbon credits to mitigate climate change, basically you're buying, and Chicago has one of the biggest carbon trade center. It's like the US stock exchange. It's a stock exchange for carbon trade. And people basically trade air. They come up with this solution to mitigate. But in real sense, it does not mitigate anything. It is still, to me, it is the world was set up to work. We can mitigate it, but it was set up to be what it is. Life is changing, things are changing, and there's always going to be a change. But if we are being pushed to do things based on climate change, I think we're going to burn. Because as a country that's still developing, we are being forced into buying into policies that does not serve us, but is serving the West and is serving corporations. And corporations know very well that the moment you refuse to take action on climate change, you're being branded. You're being branded as, you're either poor, you're being branded as uneducated, you're being branded as like literally the world is at you. And it's the same thing. I mean, might be an extreme example with what we're seeing happening with the LGBT community. It's like the moment you oppose that, then you are anti something, that's not basic. So we need to trend very carefully when we think about climate change and sustainable development. Another thing is like Africa, for example, in Kenya, for me, we have everything we need. We don't need all these GMOs. All we need is trained farmers. We have everything. We have the climate and we have water. We can be able to train our farmers and give them the food to yield. We get our meat here, we get our grains there, we get our fish there. From each county, there's something that we can get. But how are we trained? We have to reform our education system. We have to train people how to take care of the community. For example, everybody is being told that, you know what, you can just go to school and you're going to get a job. Being a farmer is not something that's celebrated. It's starting to be right now because people are realizing that food is really important. I think so. We have to really trend carefully. And right now, anytime you hear the government is talking, all they're talking about is sustainable development without really defining that term. And sustainable development simply means that we meet the needs of the present generation without compromising the needs of the future generation. But this is actually turning to be opposite. We are compromising the need of and hindering the need of the present generation and further hindering the need of the future generation by the policies that are being implemented because they're not sustainable. If you look at it and it looks good on paper, but if to apply it on the ground, it's not going to stick. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruby. Linda, please chime in.
I think somebody mentioned about Kenya is about to receive funds. I think my question is from where, and I'll kind of give time if you could add brief scoop to kind of chime his comment on agriculture because he's well versed on that topic. I'll kind of leave that space for him.
Thank you, Linda.
Lady, it's also, I think Abdi asked so many questions, so maybe they can also be answered.
Definitely. The questions are coming from the comments. Abdi, could you read the second one? Then we can have a brief scoop and Dr. Jackson answering.
So this is asking on the government has made efforts to improve food security through various initiatives. What do you think are the main gaps in these efforts? How can they be addressed? How can we improve effectiveness of irrigation schemes, infrastructure projects to reduce dependency on rain-fed agriculture? And then I will say the final question, which is what are examples of successful smart agricultural practices that can be scaled up in Kenya? How can technology and innovation be made more accessible to small-scale farmers to improve production and sustainability? Thank you.
Dr. Jackson, did you get that? Or scoop? Brief scoop, go ahead.
Thank you. Sure, I did. What can be done to mitigate for climate, for rain-fed agriculture? We don't need to mitigate for rain-fed agriculture. We need to use, in Kenya, for example, we have every single year, we have floods, and every single year we have drought. We just need to collect the rainwater, make sure that people are not drowning, by building dams, and we don't have to build, we don't have to spend billions of dollars. Philip, if you don't mind, you're unmuted. And it doesn't have to be supremely expensive dams, right? They can be done using local materials, local methods, because part of the problem with our agriculture is that the agriculture bills that are being passed, they're coming down directly from Washington. There's this, to Ruby's point, there's the climate change agenda that involves trading on Wall Street. How does trading on Wall Street, how does trading carbon credits exactly mitigate for rainfall? So it's creating wealth on Wall Street, how does that actually then lead to us solving our problems in Northeastern or Northwestern, or and apparently these days it's not just Northeastern and Northwestern, it's as far down as Meru County, as far as Kiambu County, as far as and of course Loitoktok and those areas in Narok, Kajiado County and Narok County. There is a big issue that we Kenyans are not facing when we address issues piecemeal. It's not about just sort of changing a policy here or a policy there or better implementing this particular policy document. It is about us needing to stand up as a nation and agree, are we going to continue trying to sort of improve our country, our agriculture? Specifically today, it's about agriculture and environment. Are we going to continue to try and solve the issues of colonialism and imperialism with incremental sort of discussions and policy papers and incrementalism here and there? Or are we going to just stand up and put an end to imperialism? What do I mean by that? I'll be very specific. When we have bills being passed to benefit Syngenta and Bayer Crop Science that say that Kenyans cannot exchange seeds between themselves, then what we are doing is we are allowing our economy, our food security to be colonized, to be taken from us, the control of that to be taken from us. And it's not just the control, but the impact is then that, in fact, not only do we not produce enough sufficient food for ourselves, but farmers are left with massive debt. So I don't just fight or push back against the imperialist policies that we are subject to sort of as a novelty or as a surface level issue. It is an issue that has a real impact. We have to decide as a country, are we going to push back against, we keep being told that the only system that works is this American system where we are subject to, so for example, I was looking to Galana Kulalu. We were lent $5 billion, I believe, 5 billion shillings, Kenya shillings. That's 50 million shillings from outside donors, I believe the World Bank or the IMF, one of the Bretton Woods institutions. Let me tell you something. 5 billion shillings, while it sounds like a lot of money, is actually not sufficient money to build a dam. That's $50 million. You cannot build a dam for $50 million or of that magnitude, and that is supposed to do the things that we were being told Galana Kulalu would do. And this is what the World Bank specializes in. They specialize in funding white elephants. So the theft, the internal theft notwithstanding, the corruption whereby the money ended up not even doing anything, notwithstanding, yes, that is also an issue. But let me tell you something. The biggest chunk of that money never actually even made it to the country because, again, that's what the World Bank, that's what the Bretton Woods institutions do, the IMF and the World Bank. They fund white elephants. They turn around and then tell you, the white elephant is not actually taking off. And so we are not going to release the money until you prove that this, that, or the other is happening. And so they actually create an environment that ensures the corruption that we then are left ourselves fighting each other over, whereas 70% of the funds stayed in the United States anyway. Then the little money that actually came into the country, when you read about it, there were Israeli firms here, an Israeli firm this, an Israeli firm that. All that money went to foreign corporations for all these deals because that's what the IMF and the World Bank do. They give you quote unquote give you loans, and then they turn around and force you to sign deals where you have to hire their experts, you have to make deals with Western corporations. So none of these things are going to solve our problems. What we have to do is we have to invest in local methods, local seed, local systems, go back to our roots. We fed ourselves for millennia. We fed ourselves long before the colonizers came. Yes, it's a different environment. Yes, there's a bigger population, but with that bigger population, there are more farmers as well. And the land is nowhere near exhausted. We still have plenty of land. Kenya is a country the size of France. France has a population close to 100 million. We are only 54 million. We can feed ourselves. We have sufficient rainfall every single year. We just need to find ways, creative ways of collecting the rain to ensure that people are not drowning when we have floods. And then when we have drought, we use that rainwater. We have to go back to our traditional methods of farming that worked for millennia. We have to go back to using our traditional seeds, our small seeds, our native seed, many of which are already resilient to the climate that we are in. We have food all year round. We really do not need to be. And by the way, and even despite the current situation where there is food shortages and hunger in some parts of the country, it is still, even in this current situation, we still produce enough food to feed all of Kenya. It simply doesn't make it to everyone that needs it. So are we going to continue trying a system, an economic system that doesn't work for us? Or are we going to allow ourselves to, first of all, fend off colonialism and imperialism and the imposing of bills and policies from outside? Or are we going to turn around and say, we know how to do this? We have to do some investments in infrastructure to ensure that food can get to where people need it right across the country. And then we have to turn around and also decide upon an economic system that actually works for us, something that is built and based on Ubuntu, not this Western Wall Street based economic system that only benefits the few and ensures that everything that we earn, our labor, our earnings, the work of our hands, essentially only goes to build Wall Street banks and profits for Wall Street investors. It is madness to continue doing what we are doing. And so as important as the Gen Z movement was and the issues that we raised are, and as important as much as the leadership is failing and is falling short, in reality, that leadership, the primary failure of our leadership is to stand up for us against Wall Street, against the colonizer, against the United States, against the EU, and by the way, against Eastern colonizers too, against China and the Middle East. We have to start building a Kenya that is based on Kenyan tradition, Kenyan policies, homegrown policies and solutions. We need to stop looking outside for solutions. Let me yield there because I've gone on for quite a bit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brief, for that submission. Ephraim, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. You probably know each other and you don't know me. I will just make a quick reference. I'm from Eritrea and I've had interest in Kenya for quite some time, investing in solar business. That's where my connection to Kenya is. I've been visiting your rooms for a bit. So one thing I wanted to say previously was covered. That's why I dropped my hand. But I agree with the context where you are saying one of the important factors for development, or even the topic environment and food security, is obviously good governance, and I don't think I don't think we doubt that. But for example, at some point I had invested in Somaliland, partly in agriculture and in solar energy. One thing I noticed was in Somaliland, when we were getting, for example, quality seeds or even other agricultural products, it was a commercial farming we are talking about. I'm based in Sweden, by the way. we were getting it from Dubai, while Kenya is the next door neighbor. So good governance would probably have brought a better regional integration where the infrastructure is good enough so that Kenya would make money out of it. But on the second topic, where I think it's Queen Ruby Kwan, I say Queen and Kings. I'm used to the Eritrean rooms where we call each other that way. I do not think the notion where we think climate-friendly investments or climate smart investments would deter developments. Especially in the African context, it might be actually otherwise. If because we would be jumping from the infrastructures that have been built for non-climate friendly investments, be it production, be it solar energy, be it any other material, would be jumping over to, for example, solar energy or electric car facilities and such, would be jumping one state, and it might actually give us an opportunity to be to have a leading role, because the other countries have to redevelop their infrastructures or remove the old structures that were not considered climate friendly. So it can. I still believe that a good balance of development can still be achieved through climate smart methods, and Africa or our region, in especially, can play a vital role in that. Climate is not just energy; it can be a better use of the land with less chemicals, with more organic fertilizers, or with better seeding systems. And the second thing I wanted to bring about was, it was mentioned that we should be able to move from small scale agriculture to commercial agriculture. Yes, that's true, definitely. But in our context, my reading of Kenya might not be at your levels, obviously, because you are there. But one prerequisite for that is a small scale farmer is able to find either investment to go big scale, or he or she is able to find another type of employment, which brings us to industrialization, so that commercial farmers or commercial investors can use a product in a more efficient way, where food is not just produced there for local consumption, but also for export to other countries. Just like I mentioned, a seed can be exported with a very little investment and with a better policy making from Kenya to Somaliland than bringing it from Dubai, which we were doing actually, and many other things. Obviously, Kenya is a more sophisticated land than Somaliland is. So and Somaliland was importing actually from tomato to cars and machineries. And the land doesn't basically produce anything. It's a very import-based economy. And to conclude, what I would say is, because you have a better country than my country, Eritrea, in terms of having at least a better platform for democratic governance. And we can say a lot about democracy, but I'm talking about democracy which is applicable in our context. I mean, contextual democracy. It doesn't have to be Swedish democracy or US democracy, or whatever the case may be. So what would be the role of the Kenyan diaspora? And I believe most of you are in diaspora. What would be your role allowing this to transition from a dependent economy towards having the diaspora can itself be an NGO in its own country, if organized in a better way? Diaspora itself can be assisting, be it in policy making or be it connecting to the rest of the world. For example, you just mentioned avocado. Avocado needs a lot of water, and it can affect a lot of the level of water, which is true. But avocado is also gold in the world market. So how can it be linked so that it has the required quality to be imported to Sweden instead of avocado being imported from Chile to Sweden, for example? We do have we are very blessed in water levels, actually. It's just that we are not using them to the level that's required. So the diaspora should probably play a much better role, having seen the developments of other countries, because the other countries realized economy is democracy or good governance is a main factor to have a developing economy. In many cases, not always. So that's pretty much about it. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
May I respond to Efren before it get mixed up?
Go ahead, Ruby.
Okay, so Efren, you brought a good point in terms that we have to use technologies to mitigate the climate change. However, if what I agree with you, totally, we have to use methods to mitigate climate change and to provide solution to the issue of climate change. However, my problem comes in when the corporation are using this to actually benefit from places like Africa, for example. So in Congo, the introduction, one of the best ways to mitigate climate change has been introduction of electric cars. And now look what's happening in Congo. We are using the cobalt to create electric cars that is actually not benefiting Congolese. It's actually creating a lot of problem. A lot of Congolese are being killed in Congo. This is not happening. It's not helping Africa. And now I heard that recently the cobalt is found in Kenya too. So while we're digging this cobalt, we are digging holes, and for example, and these cobalts also have chemicals that they release in the air. That's probably in the future, when the research is done, we're probably going to be like, oh, this is actually not good for our planet. Another thing also is adopting the situation of adopting the forest to do carbon trading. A lot of countries, like for example, if you look at the UAE, they recently went and they're adopting forest all over African countries and mitigating. They're coming in with a climate change agenda and sustainability agenda to mitigate climate change. But in reality, what they're doing, they're taking land. In order to adopt the forest, you have to first of all own that land in order for you to sell that carbon credit. So in the end, we might end up, the whole of Africa might end up not having a land at all. We're just going to be there, sitting there, but you don't own it. They're going to be able to dictate what we do, what we eat, how we move, everything. So that is, my problem is being the imperialists are using this not on our benefit, but for their benefit. And lastly, I just wanted to also talk about the avocado. We know the avocado is not good for the forest. However, the President Ruto is advocating for people to plant cotton. Cotton is similarly toxic to the land and to the water, and it produces a lot of toxicity to the land that is not benefiting the environment anyway. So that's what I was saying about this environment thing. It's not to serve us, the developing countries, but to serve the Westerners. And that's where the problem comes in. If you go to places for the funding, now let's look for the funding. If you look at how the funding is being done, is coming to African Bank and is coming, and as well explained, that most of the money stays in New York and it doesn't trickle down to us. We will see that on paper, but in reality, we don't see that money. It will be held, a quarter of it, and also conditions are imposed on that. And African Bank, for example, who are the biggest shares? It's the Western countries. If you look at the meeting that's taking place in African Bank, you laugh because most of the people sitting there are Westerners. And the same with ECOWAS, the West African one. And that's why the Traore, the Gen Z president, just decided to leave ECOWAS because they cannot call the shots. It's totally overtaken by the Western countries. If you look at the African Union, who are the biggest shares of African Union? It's not us. It's not Africa. It's the Western countries. They are funding it and they're dictating whatever they're going to do. I think we have to follow where the money goes. Anytime you follow the money, you kind of have a clear perspective of what's going on. And we need to stand strong. We need to stand strong. And one of the reasons we can advocate, we can say this is not our tradition. It doesn't fit us. It doesn't fit our lifestyle. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
May I respond to Ephraim, please?
Please go ahead, Linda. Thank you.
Okay, Ephraim, I know you mentioned about the diaspora involvement, but I just wanted to bring it to the table that one of the challenges we've had is actually collaborating with the Kenya government to propel all the ideas. Brief Scoop is kind of one of the counterparts where we worked with on the diaspora views document, where the document was submitted to the president. However, shortly after, I guess, the government started implementing projects, what they did was now to start shipping our people back, abroad, as they call it, where they're exporting people from Kenya to work abroad. While for us, our goal was to ensure that we are protecting our country and our investments as well, and also just kind of bringing change in a positive way. So, just to respond to you, we've been trying. However, the fact that we've been frustrated, what we've resorted to do now is to work as our own individuals, where some of us, like me, I'm a large-scale farmer. I grow avocados where I come from, and I'm just doing my thing and encouraging the rest of the diaspora to also jump onto projects and tap into the resources via the taxpayer dollars that we have allocated within foreign investments and the grants that are available. So in as much as we are trying to ensure that our country is protected, we can only do so much. So most people are resorting to just doing their own projects and running with it. We have a lot of money here that many, that has been allocated for foreign investments, but we cannot start saying that we're not going to utilize that money because that is part of our taxpayer money. So if we don't utilize it, guess what's going to happen? African Americans will tap into those grants and they'll come and have onion farms in Kenya, which, at the end of the day, it doesn't help our people because we continue to be underpaid, back home when we look at things from our perspective. That's all I have.
Thank you. Lady Justice, also to let you know, we are on the top of the hour. Probably we can do also some final submissions. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you very much. I see Rosemary's hand was up. We have a few people who've not submitted and they've been in the room for quite some time. Could you just give them an opportunity? So Rosemary, 3 minutes, Nothing Kenya, 3 minutes, and then David Wakabi, 3 minutes, please.
Thank you so much, Lady Justice. It's always a pleasure to be on the same space with you. I really enjoyed myself the other day. And let me call you out and say that wacha nitangaze, who you've written, you have some nuggets of information that we need out there. You've written wonderful books and you need to put them on the space so that some of us can access and read them. That's point number one. Huyu ni shangazi, anasema. That is one. Two, Hillary, thank you again for this space, State of the Nation, Environment and Food Security. I had no intention of speaking today. I just wanted to listen in and also soak myself with the information and experience coming in from all speakers, from Bonnie, who is your Boniface Mwangi, lakini ni Bonnie mwingine, from Ruby. You've given really wonderful formation. My brother, Brief Scoop, as always, when it comes to food security, you're nakuachia. I pack it there and I leave you to deal with it because you have done so much research. You are so heavily invested on our behalf. Abdi, I think we are following each other, and I just love, how you come onto the space and you're reading comments and doing what you're doing. I think kitu ambacho nasema ni kwamba all of us, hands on deck, we play a role. Are we going to stand on the fence? I have always said, Hillary and I, when we were doing these things, since at the time of the campaign, never stand on the fence, or you are also part of the problem. Get yourself immersed into something. Whether you are going to be doing demonstrations in Kenya, and why are you doing those demonstrations in Kenya, is because you're unhappy about an issue. Ikiwa utasimama kwenye fence, then hiyo ni shauri yako. Don't start blaming anybody when bad leaders are elected. And of course, that brings up the issue of civic education that has been talked about over and over and over. I had hoped that, Daktari is still here. Daktari, I wanted to challenge you. You brought up something very close to my heart. Na ukasema mambo ya Victory Farms wanafanya fish caging and they've cut out the local what have you. Let me encourage you. Don't be lazy. Get your relatives together into a circle. Invest hata kama ni kama $1,000. Waanze fish cages. We are doing it in, I'm also from Lake Victoria, close by there. We are doing fish cages. And there's a huge consumption and there's huge need for fish. Hata kina brief siku hizi wakikuwa wanakula samaki. Unajua, this is something we, literally our snack was fish. But, joking there, but really, this is just something that needs to be promoted. All I'm saying is that there is a huge demand for fish all over the country and external. I know a lady here in the US, actually, I think she imports her fish either from China, ama from the Chinese, ama kitu kama hicho. I've not delved into going into details, but that's what I had. All I'm saying ni kwamba kuna biashara. Wacha Victory Farms wafanye what they are doing in around Lake Victoria, but also you and I, tushike mkono maantis wetu, our relatives who've been doing fishing for the longest time, and they're now being cut out. Particularly, I'm told the Kenyan waters, or part of the Lake Victoria, maji mingi iko Uganda and elsewhere. But the little that we have has been saturated. Samaki zote zimekwisha. Now you only get Nile perch and what have you, which is not as tasty. So I'm just saying in terms of food security, that is one area. Kitu cha pili, the question I wanted, so that is a challenge I'm giving to Daktari and to each one of you. Hata wewe Abdi, sijui unatoka wapi kule Kenya, hata kama ni northeastern ama northwestern ama north wherever, shikana na watu kidogo, muanze fish cages. Iko biashara hapo, nawaambia. The other thing, brief scoop, I wanted to find out, Bretton Woods institutions. How can we ever do away with them? Cut them out. I am one of the people that has said when Yoweri Museveni came to power, he never went to the Bretton Woods institutions to borrow money. Yeye alikwenda China, alikwenda to certain countries producing something, akasema mimi nitawapatia maharage, and in exchange of my foodstuff, beans, because Uganda has wonderful soil. And why do I say this? I know it very well and you know it very well, but I border with them. So that soil is just superb. So all I'm saying is that how can we do away with IMF? We are servicing a debt we never received, but also how can we do away with it? Do we have serious leadership that can even go and negotiate with the Paris Club, all these people, so that some of our debts are written off because we never received them in the first place? Ama tugome tu tusilipe. So let me yield my mic. Ruby, you gave very good information on carbon credits. I need to understand it a little bit better because I think that is something that is being talked around as so important. This, that, nini, mambo ya carbon credits. And if you don't go green, I have nothing against going green, but must it be pushed down our throats in Africa when actually the people emitting greenhouses, gases, nanini, it's other countries? Let us hold them. Let us hold the US, some of these big countries that are emitting some of these gases. Wow, they are the biggest culprits. So let me yield my mic here by saying thank you. This is wonderful. I can see my good friend here, Linda Stewart, Moto Kitchen, doing a wonderful job na machakula zake. Some of us have also ordered samosa, chapati, nini, all that. So, we need to support each other. Thank you. One last thing that I wanted to also give out to Daktari and to everybody else, funding. I said ukisaidia relatives even $1,000 ama kitu kama hicho, kama huna hiyo pesa, listen, there's this organization inaitwa WIDU Africa. We do. They match. If you're in Europe, if you're located in Europe currently, it's doing rounds in Europe, started by the German government. You have a relative or a friend in one of these European countries, na kuna biashara inaendelea Africa, particularly Kenya. All they need to do is apply, Google, apply, assuming your business is $1,000, what we will do, we'll give you 2 times that, so you have $3,000 kufanya biashara. There you have it. Thank you.
Asante sana, Auntie Rose. You had to do it, right? Anyway, thank you very much once again. Nothing KE, alafu what David Wakabi, please. 3 minutes each. Nothing KE? Key nothing or nothing KE. KE nothing. It's time to offer ourselves. Sometimes people are on this side and they don't know the names they're using. Or David, could you please go ahead as we wait for nothing?
Okay, can you hear me, Lady Justice?
Yes. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. I think I had a trouble with the internet, but I'm glad I'm back. Thank you so much, Hillary and Lady Justice, for hosting the space. And I'd like to thank also Ruby for having mentioned, I think I agree with almost everything that she stated earlier. And I would like to say something in regards of the current government all over the world. What I would like to provide information or even enlighten every one of us is that if we are just sitting down and waiting for the government to solve all of our problems, I think most of our problems are to make decisions and being we had
We are losing you.
Oh, David, it's not a
terms
good
of
day for you.
she got a chance to plant maize.
Paula, David, excuse me, David.
Can you
Goja kidogo. We
hear?
can hear you, but you're breaking a lot. So here's what you can do. How about you submit your information, send it to me on message, or just put it on the comments and we'll add it, because you're really breaking up. Is that fair? Yes, please. I think that would be fair for everybody.
Okay.
David? Yeah, because
Yeah.
hata saizi si nikakusikia. Pole sana, pole.
Okay.
And thank you for being very consistent in the group. Nothing KE, going 1, going 2, 3. Brief scoop, I think it's your opportunity.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to a couple of things that have been brought up and also asked. So, for example, the issue that I have, even regardless of what side you stand on with regard to the environmental question, whether climate change is a hoax or not, or whether climate change is real, regardless of where you stand, in that discussion, what we can all agree on is that the mitigation efforts that are happening have absolutely nothing to do with Africa. So, for example, as Ruby pointed out, electric cars. How is making electric cars good for Africa? So, while even if you were to agree that electric vehicles might be good for the environment, which, by the way, it is now proven they are not, because the batteries are extremely toxic. You cannot get rid of them, and once they're used up, there's we are going to be facing another environmental catastrophe of excess batteries that are extremely, extremely toxic. So, but even if you were to agree that maybe there's a way we can, even if we were to figure it out, at this particular point in time, how are EV vehicles good for the Congo? They are not. Same thing with avocado farming for export. We can grow all the avocado we need for us, for our own consumption here in Kenya or in Africa. But why do we need to be, we do not need to be producing avocados to export to Sweden. With all due respect, Ephraim, I'm sorry, you'll have to still eat your avocados from Chile, or to China or the United States, in all seriousness. We don't need to, because what we need to do in order to solve our problems as Africans is to start actually solving the problems that we have. We cannot have hunger in our own countries and yet be farming avocados for export, which consume, as many people have said in here, so much water. They're actually really terrible for the environment. If done en masse, if we are trying to do it to satisfy the massive American appetite or European appetite, we're going to destroy our lands for the food that we need to be growing for ourselves. So we have to put Africa first. We have to put Kenya first in all the solutions that we are coming up with. And same thing with cotton, as somebody else pointed out. African Development Bank, by the way, is the World Bank. It's not just that the shareholders are Westerners. It is actually a branch of the World Bank. And by the way, the Afrexim Bank is a branch of a Chinese bank. I forget which one in China. I should have looked it up. There was a suggestion about the participation of diaspora. The Ethiopian diaspora contributed $5 billion to build the Grand Renaissance Dam in Ethiopia. They did not have to borrow a penny. But compare that with $50 million given to us Kenyans as a loan to build our dam project. The Ethiopians contributed $5 billion. We were given $50 million for a white elephant that only leads to the issues that we now see, and then leaves us owing money. And by the way, by the time all of that was done, with all the court cases and litigation and everything that happened after that, it ended up being that dam wasted over 140, close to $140 million. And Rosemary asked a really important question. What do we do about Bretton Woods? What we can do is what, as you point out, Uganda did. We have accepted this paradigm where we say we have accepted as factual that colored paper money, what they give us from the United States, colored paper, because that's all it is. The US dollar is colored paper backed by, and I'm not being facetious when I say this, it's backed by nothing but a printer. So we have accepted this paradigm that the US dollar is worth what they say that it is. But in reality, is it? How do we exchange coltan, gold, diamonds, oil for colored paper? How about we turn around and say, no, we don't need your colored paper. What we need is actual materials that we can use, practical things that we can use in exchange for our materials, like for like. And eventually, we need to go even further and get off the international currency exchange protocols, because currently, the United States dollar is, the USD is the international currency, essentially that's what we all use because all commodities are sold in US dollars. But eventually, at some point, we need to come up with regional currencies. For example, the East African community, we keep talking about a single currency. We should have a single currency in the East African community backed by our resources. And then the next thing we have to do is eventually, we need to start pricing. Not eventually, really. There should be a revolution. We should do it much sooner. We've seen the Burkinabe, the Malians, the Nigerian actually do that without waiting for decades through international litigation and court cases and what have you to do this. They've turned around and they've said Burkina Faso now is going to be using their gold to back their currency. We can do these things. We can do these things in short order. We don't have to do them over 20 years. We don't have to do them incrementally. But we need our own currency backed by our own resources, our own natural resources. And in the meantime, until we have that, we should be exchanging. We should be battering. We shouldn't be accepting loans in dollars. It's actually completely useless. And then what the United States turns around and does is willy-nilly, they can just opt to devalue your currency. So whatever payments you're making double overnight. And all of this is something that they actually do arbitrarily. We accept that there's a rhyme and the reason for why they do these things. Actually, in effect, there isn't one. Show me somebody who gives you the rhyme or reason why they are able to do these things. Because if there was a rhyme or reason, when the United States is suffering from inflation, we in Kenya should not be. In fact, what should happen, and the Kenyan shilling should not be declining against the dollar. But what happens is that whenever the United States is...
Brief. We have 5 minutes to go. We have 5 minutes to go. So if you can land, it'll be better. Lady Justice, when Scoop is done, let us wind up. Thank you.
Sawa. I'll just wind up to say that if there was a rhyme or reason, when the US when the US economy is suffering, the Kenya shilling should not be declining, the Kenya shilling should be strengthening. But what actually ends up happening is that because we all use the US dollar, what happens is that when the US economy is suffering, then what they're able to do is they're able to export their inflation to all the rest of us, which is why there's a global inflation that's causing a global recession right now. Instead of the Americans suffering, everybody else who uses the dollar suffers because what they do is they can print unlimited amounts of cash. I'm going to yield there in the interest of time. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to present my thoughts on this very important subject. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to hear from our guests today, Ruby and Daktari, for your closing remarks. And please, thank you.
Okay, I can go. I just want to thank everybody. Thank you, Hillary. Thank you, Lady Justice, and everybody here that have come to tune in. You've really taken your time because you care. And as much, I can tell you, I used to be laid back, but I really felt like I used to say I'm not interested in politics until I realized that actually politics is going into my life. It's really penetrating. So I hope that I will continue to take a stand, whichever little stand that each one of us can take. It makes an impact, spreading words over there, following each other, and always reposting and to reach as wide masses as possible. And another thing I just want to say that we have to know that as Africans, we're really strong. And this is something that people, Europeans know about. We don't know our strength, but they know our strength. And the fear is there that if we rise, it's a threat to them. So what is the policy? The policy is always to keep us down as much as possible. There's a scientific evidence that shows that us Africans have like 12 genetic strides, where all of the rest have 6. And when it's come to melanin as well, we have so much. So we should always think ourselves as higher and not lower. And that's going to help us to stand on our own and not always thinking that we have to beg in order for us to survive, in order for us to stand. And also when it comes to electing our leaders, let's always look at the history of our leaders, because most of our leaders get compromised when they have some kind of case that is affecting them. For example, our president right now, he cannot back down. Like, he's taken hostage. I believe he's really taken hostage. He knows that all these policies are not working. They're not good. It's not going to serve us. But it's been taken hostage, and they can't turn back, and they will always dangle the ICC to him. If it dare, try not to do whatever that it takes. And let's always keep an eye. Whenever you see Blinken come in Kenya, please put your eyes wide open. It's just somebody who's coming to put a stamp on whatever he's doing. Like, he came after the Gen Z protest. It's like, okay, he's here in Kenya, and not, but in actual sense, they're not actually. They're just coming to tell maybe President, we don't care. You signed a deal, and you have to abide by it. We don't care. So now you see people like Mbadi are elected there, and they are bringing all these policies back. So we really have to choose the leaders wisely, and see leaders who have clean record, and to take positions of power. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Hillary, for bringing this topic. It's indeed food, and food security is my passion. I love food. I love to cook. I love to eat. And I don't like eating food that's not good for me. The other day, I was making fun of my daughter, telling her that I don't think she can run the way the Gen Zs in Kenya run and active, because she's been eating all this GMO since she was born. The Gen Zs in Kenya are very strong. You see, like, people going on the streets. I don't think the kids born here can do that. So let's maintain our food and make sure that we eat good. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ruby. Dr. Your turn.
Oh, thank you, Lady Justice. Thank you, Hillary, and indeed all the speakers and listeners that made it for the space. I have been enlightened quite well. I have learnt a lot from the submissions of the people who've gone before me, who've spoken alongside me. And it is clear, dear ladies and gentlemen, that we have a great task ahead of us. This revolution, to me, was a moment of awakening, so that those of us like myself and Ruby, who have been comfortable in our spaces, could arise and liberate our country. It has been said, and we know, and we all agree, that we need economic liberation. We need to realize the true fruits of independence. I usually tell my students in class that I think what we obtained was internal self-rule. But then, after obtaining internal self-rule, there was another independence that they lied to us that we received, but we didn't receive it. I think all they gave us was internal self-rule, but they gave us that now you have a black president, but who is a puppet of the West. And it has happened for all this. It's now coming clearly to us. People have told us what's happening in the system, including we had a nice discussion here about Jimmy Wanjigi last time. People who have been behind the machinations in the system now coming out to tell us, hey, guys, this is what takes place behind the scenes. Beware. So what have we to do? It behoves us as the elite of this country to come together to educate and enlighten the rest of the population, and above all, not only to call for good leadership and advocate, but we, as I said earlier, we now want to go beyond advocating to actually build a critical mass of people, young people, people of integrity, people across all ages who can stand by a clear record of their past, people of competence who can go in there and take control of the happenings in this country and help us to liberate. Otherwise, if we don't do anything at this moment, we are not going. It's not going to be easy for us in the future. Yeah, before we start also breeding a generation of GMO kids who will find it very difficult to fight for themselves in the future, let us make use of the energy of the current youth who can still stand up against injustices in the society, so that we can nurture this movement and ultimately convert it into real change in this country. Thank you so much. I look forward to engaging with you more in upcoming discussions. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nyonyango. Just want to appreciate each and every one of us for being here today. It's a Sunday evening or Sunday morning, wherever you are, or daytime, where you took the time. Hilary, thank you for always putting together the space. We meet again next week with another topic. Please follow Hilary so that you are in the know of when he's hosting another space. Abdi, thank you for helping today. Ruby, thank you for your knowledge and expertise. Daktari as well. Brief Scoop, Linda Stewart. Mama Rosemary, thank you very much. All the speakers, Nairobi Bad, Northern KE, Shaban. I'm trying not to be, I'm trying to be inclusive. So, kila mtu, santeni sana. Thank you for your love for Kenya. Thank you for always standing up. Thank you for doing the little that you can. Every little bit that we do together, it makes a big difference. Asanteni sana. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you so much, Lady Justice, and thank you so much, everybody. Have a blessed evening, a blessed day, wherever you are. Let us meet as soon as possible. Maybe tomorrow we have a sport. We are talking with more comment to come for issue of sports, and we really appreciate your time always. Keep networking always, and God bless each and every